I never told my husband that I secretly owned nearly half of his father's company. For 8 years of our marriage, his family believed I was just another quiet wife. Polite, supportive, invisible. They talked over me at dinners, corrected me in front of guests, smiled when I stayed silent, and looked irritated when I spoke. They thought I had no influence, no leverage, no power. What they didn't know was that through a web of private holding companies, I owned 47% of the business his father built. A stake worth just over $23 billion. I didn't hide it to play games. I hid it because I wanted to know who people were when they thought I had nothing to offer them. Then one Tuesday evening, my husband invited me to dinner with his parents. Not a casual dinner. Not a celebration. A formal dinner. The kind that comes with stiff smiles, rehearsed politeness, and quiet agendas. I could feel it before we even left the house. That tight silence in the air. The kind that tells you something is about to break. Halfway through the meal, his father slid a leather folder across the table toward me. Not toward my husband. Toward me. That was the moment I realized this dinner was never about family. It was about control. And they had no idea who they were trying to control. If you've ever been underestimated in your own relationship or family, comment, "She hit it." I want to know how many women have lived this story. By every outward measure, my life looked ordinary. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom home on a quiet street where neighbors waved from their porches and kids rode bicycles until sunset. The house had a front porch with 2 rocking chairs that creaked when the wind picked up, and a backyard where I grew tomatoes and basil in raised garden beds I'd built myself one summer weekend. The paint on the shutters was starting to peel in places, and the fence needed staining, but it was ours. Every mortgage payment felt like a small victory. Every repair I learned to do myself felt like proof that I didn't need anyone's help to build something solid. Nothing flashy. Nothing curated for appearances. I drove a 7-year-old SUV with a cracked dashboard and coffee stains in the cup holder. The AC took 3 minutes to kick in during summer, and the back seat was permanently cluttered with reusable grocery bags, a spare umbrella, and whatever book I was reading that month. I'd had offers to upgrade, opportunities to trade it in for something sleeker. But I liked that car. It had carried me through cross-country moves, late-night drives when I needed to think, and countless early morning commutes when I was still building my client base from nothing. It didn't impress anyone in a parking lot, but it got me where I needed to go. My clothes came from local boutiques and clearance racks, not luxury stores. I owned exactly 2 blazers, both of which I wore on rotation for video calls. My jewelry was minimal, a thin gold chain my grandmother left me, small hoop earrings I'd had since college. I never saw the point of dressing to perform wealth I didn't have or pretending to be someone I wasn't. Comfort and competence mattered more to me than labels. I worked remotely as a supply chain consultant, helping small companies fix broken systems and late deliveries. I'd built the business over 8 years, client by client, referral by referral. Most of my work happened over spreadsheets and Zoom calls, untangling logistical nightmares for family-owned manufacturers and regional distributors who couldn't afford the big consulting firms. I saved them money. I kept their operations running. I solved problems that kept business owners awake at night. Honest work. Real impact. Quiet money. The kind of income that didn't announce itself but accumulated steadily. The kind that let me pay off student loans early, max out retirement accounts, and build an emergency fund that could carry us for over a year if everything fell apart. I didn't talk about it. I didn't need to. Security didn't require an audience. His family never respected it. To them, success only counted if it came with a title, a corner office, and a parking spot with your name engraved on it. They measured worth in square footage and brand names, in club memberships and vacation properties. They talked about money constantly while pretending they were above talking about money. Every conversation was a subtle competition. Who had renovated what, who had been invited where, whose children were achieving the most visible success. If you didn't arrive in a luxury car, you didn't matter. If you didn't dominate a room, you weren't worth listening to. I had watched his mother survey my outfit at our first meeting, her eyes moving from my shoes to my handbag in one quick, appraising glance. I had seen his father's polite confusion when I tried to explain what I did for work, as if consulting without a prestigious firm name attached was somehow not a real profession. I had felt his siblings' collective disinterest settle over me like a weight every time I entered a room. At family gatherings, they asked my husband about his career. They asked his father about investments. They asked his mother about charity galas and social committees. The men discussed market trends and property acquisitions. The women discussed interior designers and upcoming events. Everyone had a role. Everyone had a script. When the conversation drifted toward me, it usually sounded like this. "So what do you do again?" "Oh, that's nice. And how long have you been doing that?" Then the topic quietly changed. Someone would mention a recent trip. Someone else would bring up a mutual acquaintance. The spotlight would shift, and I would fade back into the periphery where they seemed to prefer I stay. Not actively excluded, just consistently overlooked. A placeholder in their family portrait rather than a full participant. I learned to read their tone the way you learn to read weather before a storm. Polite smiles meant judgment. The curve of a lip that didn't quite reach the eyes, the tilt of a head that suggested amusement rather than warmth. Compliments meant comparison. "What a charming little house," meant it wasn't big enough. "You always look so comfortable," meant I wasn't dressed well enough. Every kind word carried a hidden measurement. Silence meant dismissal. When they stopped asking questions, it wasn't because they were satisfied with the answers. It was because they'd already decided I had nothing worth hearing. My husband noticed it too, even when he didn't always know how to confront it. He would squeeze my hand under the table when his mother made a pointed comment. He would change the subject when his father started comparing careers. He loved his family, but he also saw them clearly. Their blind spots, their biases, their tendency to value appearance over substance. It put him in an impossible position, caught between the people who raised him and the woman he'd chosen. I never asked him to pick sides. I just needed him to see what I saw. That night before the dinner, he barely touched his food. We were sitting at our kitchen table, the one we'd found at an estate sale and refinished ourselves, the one that had hosted hundreds of quiet dinners and long conversations. But that night, the silence felt different. Heavier. He pushed his pasta around his plate, fork scraping against ceramic in a rhythm that matched his restlessness. He kept checking his phone, scrolling through a message thread he didn't want to show me. Every few minutes, his screen would light up. He'd glance at it, frown slightly, then set it back down without responding. I watched him do this 4 times before I finally set down my own fork. I knew that silence. It was the same silence that showed up before every uncomfortable family conversation. The silence before his mother criticized our wedding venue. The silence before his father questioned why I hadn't taken his last name. The silence before his sister made a comment about our decision not to have children yet. That particular quiet had a texture to it, thick and anticipatory, like the air before a thunderstorm when you can feel electricity building but haven't yet seen the lightning. "What did your father say?" I finally asked. He hesitated. His jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought he might deflect, might tell me it was nothing, might try to protect me from whatever was coming. But we'd been married long enough that he knew better than to keep things from me. Then he handed me the phone. The message was short, formal, cold. "Dinner. Friday. 7 p.m. Important family matter." No greeting. No warmth. No explanation. Just a summons. Not an invitation. Not a request. A command dressed up in the language of family obligation. I read it 3 times, looking for some clue about what they wanted, some hint about what was coming. But the message gave nothing away. It was designed that way, vague enough to create anxiety, formal enough to demand compliance. I felt my stomach tighten. When his family got formal, someone usually got cornered. I had seen it happen before. The way they orchestrated conversations like chess moves, positioning people exactly where they wanted them before making their real intentions known. They didn't have confrontations, they had interventions. They didn't argue, they presented unified fronts. "Do you think this is about your job?" I asked. He had recently been passed over for a promotion, a fact his father had learned about through connections before my husband had even told us himself. It would be just like them to turn a private disappointment into a family discussion, to use it as evidence that he should have followed the path they'd originally planned for him. He shook his head slowly. "I think it's about us." The word hung in the air between us. Us. Not him. Not his career. Not some external problem they could frame as concern. Us. Our marriage. Our life. The choices we'd made together that didn't fit their vision of how things should be. That's when I knew this dinner wasn't going to be polite. It was going to be strategic. They were planning something, preparing something, and they expected us to walk in unprepared, to be caught off guard by whatever verdict they had already reached among themselves. And they still had no idea who was sitting across from them. They saw the modest house and the old car. They saw the clearance rack clothes and the unimpressive job title. They saw a woman who didn't fight for airtime at their gatherings, who smiled politely and let conversations drift away from her, who seemed content to exist at the edges of their world. They had mistaken my quiet for weakness. They were about to learn the difference. If you've ever walked into a family situation knowing something serious was coming, I felt that. You're not alone. I didn't wake up one morning and decide to hide billions from my husband. There was no single moment where I sat down, calculated the risks, and chose deception as a strategy. It wasn't a decision made in one breath. It was a posture I developed over years, a way of moving through the world that became so ingrained I stopped noticing when it had started. It wasn't secrecy for power. It wasn't manipulation. It wasn't a game. I've heard those accusations in my own head, in the quiet hours when I questioned what she had built. The lawyers handled the estate with discretion. The numbers on the paperwork didn't match the woman I had known, the one who clipped coupons and reused aluminum foil, who drove the same sedan for 15 years and never once mentioned investments at the dinner table. She wasn't flashy. She didn't believe in loud wealth. She believed in patience, discipline, and letting compound interest do the heavy lifting while you stayed quiet. She had taught me, in her own subtle way, that money was a tool, not an identity. That wealth announced was wealth diminished, not in value, but in utility. The moment people knew what you had, they started calculating what they could get. Relationships shifted. Conversations tilted. Every interaction carried an undercurrent of expectation. I watched it happen to others. I refused to let it happen to me. I invested early. Not recklessly, not emotionally. I studied businesses the way some people study relationships. Balance sheets told me what a company valued. Leadership behavior told me what a company would become. Market cycles told me when fear created opportunity. Risk exposure told me when to walk away. I spent years learning to read between the lines of quarterly reports, to spot the difference between genuine growth and accounting sleight of hand. I made mistakes, lost money on hunches that didn't pan out, learned to separate intuition from wishful thinking. Slowly, methodically, I built something that didn't depend on anyone else's approval or anyone else's timeline. That's how I found his father's company. It showed up in a screening I ran for undervalued mid-cap companies with strong underlying assets. The fundamentals caught my attention first: real estate holdings, proprietary processes, long-term contracts that provided steady revenue. But the deeper I looked, the more fractures I found beneath the polished surface. At the time, it was undervalued and overstretched. Strong assets, weak discipline, one bad economic cycle away from collapse. The leadership spent lavishly on image while neglecting infrastructure. Debt ratios crept upward quarter after quarter. Executive compensation outpaced revenue growth. It was a company running on reputation and momentum, coasting on past success while the foundation quietly eroded. I saw opportunity where others saw stability. I bought in quietly through layered holding entities. No headlines, no press releases, no name recognition, just patient accumulation, timed around market dips and moments of temporary pessimism. I never attended shareholder meetings in person. I never made demands or sought board seats. I simply held, waited, and watched. Over time, one position became several. Several became leverage. Leverage became ownership. The company stabilized, partly because markets recovered and partly because quieter voices on the board started pushing for the reforms I would have demanded if I'd been visible. I let my shares speak through proxies, through carefully worded letters from attorneys, through the slow pressure that comes when someone controls enough equity to matter without ever showing. When money entered a relationship as a known quantity. I had watched friends marry into wealth and lose themselves in the process. Their opinions suddenly weighted differently, their preferences suddenly negotiable, their sense of self slowly absorbed into someone else's financial gravity. I had watched men change when they learned a woman had resources, becoming either threatened or opportunistic, rarely staying exactly who they had been before. I wanted to know who loved me when I wasn't impressive, who respected me when I didn't intimidate, who listened when I wasn't necessary. I wanted to be ordinary in his eyes, unremarkable, easily overlooked if he was the kind of person who only paid attention to status and surface. I wanted to see what he did when there was nothing to gain from being kind to me, nothing to lose from dismissing me. Money changes behavior faster than truth ever can. It rewrites conversations before they happen. It reshapes how people enter rooms, how they offer opinions, how they apologize or refuse to. Wealth creates a force field that bends everything toward it, and the people inside that field rarely notice how warped their perspective has become. People become careful, performative, transactional. They measure words. They calculate gestures. They perform generosity while keeping mental ledgers of who owes what to whom. I had grown up watching my grandmother navigate those dynamics, watching her keep her wealth invisible so she could see people as they actually were rather than as they presented themselves to power. I didn't want to marry a man who loved my balance sheet. I wanted a man who loved my character. I wanted someone who would stay when things looked hard, who would build something with me rather than expecting something from me, who would see partnership as shared effort rather than shared access. And I did. He loved me when I drove an old car. He never once suggested I needed something newer or flashier, never seemed embarrassed to be seen in a vehicle that didn't match his family's standards. He appreciated that I cared more about reliability than appearance. When I packed leftovers for lunch, he didn't see frugality as a flaw. He saw it as practicality, as evidence that I wasn't trying to impress anyone, that I was comfortable in my own choices. He packed leftovers too, sometimes, just to join me. When I said no to lifestyle upgrades because peace mattered more than image, he didn't push. He didn't sulk. He asked questions, tried to understand my reasoning, and ultimately respected that I had priorities that didn't align with conventional ambition. He defended me when his family dismissed my work. I watched him do it more than once, the tightening of his jaw when his mother made a comment, the quiet redirect when his father started comparing careers, the way he would find me afterward and apologize for things that weren't his fault. He saw how they treated me. It bothered him. He didn't always know how to fix it, but he never pretended it wasn't happening. He chose me when subtle pressure suggested he should marry differently. I knew about those conversations, even when he tried to shield me from them. The hints his mother dropped about other women, better connected, more suitable. I thought eventually they would see my character, my work ethic, my commitment to their son. I thought substance would eventually outweigh surface. I was wrong. Every raised eyebrow, every sideways comment, every polite insult wrapped in manners. Years passed. Nothing changed. If anything, their disdain calcified into something harder, no longer open hostility, just a settled certainty that I wasn't enough, would never be enough, existed only as a tolerable inconvenience in their son's otherwise acceptable life. They smiled at me across holiday tables while their eyes communicated something colder. They asked about my work with a tone that suggested they already knew the answer wasn't worth hearing. They included me in family photos while positioning me at the edges. For years, I stayed quiet on purpose. Not because I was afraid. Not because I didn't have options, but because I wanted to be certain. I wanted to give them every opportunity to surprise me, to prove that their values were more flexible than they appeared, to show some capacity for growth or genuine acceptance. I wasn't waiting to dominate them. I was watching to see if they would ever see past appearances, if they would ever ask a question about my life and actually listen to the answer. If they would ever compliment something real instead of something performative. If they would ever treat their son's choice as worthy of respect rather than tolerance. They never did. Year after year. Dinner after dinner. The same polite dismissal. The same comfortable contempt. The same absolute certainty that they understood exactly who I was and what I was worth. And now they had invited me to a formal dinner. A formal dinner with an important family matter on the agenda. No explanation. No warmth. Just a summons to appear before people who had spent years making clear exactly how little they thought of me. I read the invitation again. Felt the familiar weight of their expectations pressing against my chest. But this time, something had shifted. I was done watching. Done waiting. Done giving them chances they had never earned and would never use. They had made their judgments. Now they would learn how incomplete those judgments had been. If you believe silence can reveal people's true character, type watching. Because sometimes patience teaches you exactly who you're dealing with. Friday evening arrived heavier than it should have. The day had passed in fragments. Ordinary tasks that felt disconnected from the weight waiting at its end. I answered emails without absorbing the words. I folded laundry and forgot where I put it. I watered plants that didn't need watering, just to have something to do with my hands. Not stormy. Not dramatic. The sky outside our kitchen window stayed pale and unremarkable. No thunder gathering on the horizon. No wind rattling the screens. Just that stillness that settles before something shifts, when the world holds its breath without knowing why. Just that better to face it directly. Better to know. I sat in the passenger seat, watching familiar streets slide past our windows. Small homes with porch lights flickering on. Neighbors walking dogs. Kids chalking sidewalks before dinner. A woman waved to someone we couldn't see. A man adjusted sprinklers on his lawn. Two teenagers sat on a curb, heads bent toward a phone screen, laughing at something private. These were lives lived without performance, without audience, without the constant calculation of how things looked from the outside. This was our world. Ordinary, honest, comfortable in a way money can't manufacture. I had chosen this, deliberately, repeatedly. Every time I could have upgraded and didn't. Every time I could have revealed what I had and stayed silent instead. I chose the leaky faucet and the crooked shelves. I chose the 7-year-old SUV and the tomato garden. I chose to build something real rather than something impressive. My hand rested on the center console between us, close enough that he could reach it if he needed grounding. I could feel the tension in the car the way you feel humidity before rain. It wasn't visible, but it pressed against the skin. It changed the way air moved in your lungs. He was bracing himself for something, and I wanted him to know he wasn't bracing alone. He didn't say much. His jaw was set in that way it got when he was processing something he didn't want to say out loud. I had learned to recognize that particular silence, not the comfortable quiet of two people who had run out of things to say, but the weighted quiet of someone holding back. Neither did I. There would be time for words later, time for strategy, for processing, for whatever came after. Right now, we just needed to arrive. We just needed to walk through the door together and see what was waiting on the other side. We didn't need to. Some conversations happen without language. A glance that says, "I'm with you." A touch that says, "I know." Years of shared experience compressed into gestures so small an outsider would miss them entirely. You learn the rhythm of someone's silence when you've shared a life long enough. You learn what their breathing sounds like when they're worried. You learn the difference between their thinking silence and their avoiding silence. You learn to read the space between words, the things they can't quite articulate but communicate anyway through presence and proximity. The city lights faded as we headed toward the hills. Streetlights spaced farther apart. Houses stretched wider. Driveways curved like private roads. The neighborhoods changed around us like a gradient, modest homes giving way to larger ones, then larger still. Fences grew taller. Gates appeared. The visible markers of wealth accumulated gradually and then all at once, until we were surrounded by properties that existed more as statements than as shelters. The change wasn't gradual. Or rather, it was gradual until it wasn't. One block felt like where people lived. The next felt like where people by people living real lives. The next, you're surrounded by properties designed to be admired, not lived in. I watched a mansion slide past my window, its windows dark despite the hour, its lawn immaculate despite the absence of children to run across it. These houses weren't homes. They were monuments. Proof of something. Evidence submitted to an invisible jury that never stopped deliberating. I used to think this was normal, my husband said quietly, staring through the windshield. Growing up, I thought everyone lived like this. His voice carried something I rarely heard in it, not quite shame, but something adjacent. A kind of retrospective disbelief at his own former blindness. He had told me before about his childhood, the private schools and summer homes, the assumption that the world was divided into people like his family and people who served people like his family. He hadn't known any better. Children never do. When did you realize they didn't? I asked. I knew the answer already. Or at least I knew part of it. But I wanted him to say it. I wanted him to remember, tonight of all nights, how far he had traveled from where he started. The first time I came to your apartment, he said. The one with the leaky faucet and the crooked shelves. You cooked pasta on a hot plate and acted like it was a 5-star meal. I remembered that night. The way he had looked around my tiny studio with something like wonder, as if he had discovered a species of living he hadn't known existed. The way he had asked genuine questions about my life, my work, my choices, not to judge them but to understand them. The way he had eaten every bite of that pasta and asked for seconds. I smiled despite the tension. That was a 5-star meal. The pasta had been overcooked. The sauce had come from a jar. The wine had cost $8 and tasted like it. But we had talked until midnight, discovering all the ways our lives had been different and all the ways our values aligned anyway. That was the night I started to believe he might be someone worth trusting. He exhaled softly, then grew serious again. The moment of warmth passed. The road ahead pulled us back to the present, back to what waited at its end. His shoulders carried tension I wished I could lift. His hands gripped the steering wheel like he was holding on to something more than direction. They don't see life the way you do, he said. They see rank, image, position. He was warning me, or preparing me, or maybe just saying out loud what we both already knew. His family operated on a different currency than the one we used. Worth was measured in visibility, in comparison, in the constant quiet competition of who had more, who mattered more, who had risen higher than whom. I know, I replied. I had known it from the first handshake at the first dinner years ago. I had seen it in the way his mother looked at my shoes before looking at my face. I had heard it in the way his father asked what I did and then immediately asked what my father did, as if my answer only mattered in context of lineage. I had felt it in every interaction since, the persistent, unspoken calculation of where I ranked and why I fell short. He glanced at me. You don't have to go in there ready for battle. There was concern in his voice. He had seen what their dinners did to me, even when I tried to hide it. The way I went quiet on the drive home. The way I sometimes stood in the bathroom afterward, just breathing, resetting, letting the tension drain out of my shoulders before I could speak again. I turned toward him fully now. I wanted him to see my face. I wanted him to understand that something had changed in me, that I wasn't walking into this dinner the way I had walked into all the others. I'm not going in for battle, I said calmly. I'm going in for clarity. Battle implied anger, implied a desire to wound, implied that their opinion of me still had the power to hurt. Clarity was different. Clarity was seeing things as they were. Clarity was letting truth surface, whatever that truth turned out to be. Clarity was releasing the need to control outcomes and simply allowing what was hidden to become visible. The estate gates appeared ahead, sliding open automatically. Sensors had detected our approach. Somewhere inside, someone knew we had arrived. The gates parted smoothly, silently, as if welcoming us into a world that operated on different rules than the one we had just left behind. Stone walls, perfect landscaping, architectural lighting that made the property look like a showroom instead of a home. Every element had been chosen for effect. The fountain in the center of the circular drive, lit from below. The topiaries trimmed into geometric precision. The windows glowing with warm light that looked inviting from outside, but felt colder once you stepped through the door. This was wealth performed. Wealth as theater. Wealth as a language designed to make certain people feel welcome and certain people feel small. My husband's grip tightened on the steering wheel. I watched his knuckles go pale. Watched his jaw clench. Watched the boy he had been resurfaced briefly in the man I had married. The child who had grown up in places like this and never felt quite comfortable, never felt quite enough, never escaped the sense that he was being evaluated against standards he couldn't fully see. "This place still makes me feel like a kid again," he admitted. "Like I'm about to get graded." His voice was quiet, vulnerable in a way he rarely let himself be. This house held memories for him I would never fully understand. Expectations he had spent a lifetime trying to meet or escape. Love that came with conditions he had never agreed to. I reached over and squeezed his hand. I wanted to anchor him, to remind him that he had built a different life now, that the grades they gave no longer determined his worth, that he had chosen his own standards and lived up to them, even when it cost him their approval. "You're not a child anymore," I said gently. "And neither am I." We had both grown into people they hadn't anticipated. He had become someone who valued substance over status. I had become someone who held more power than they had ever imagined. Tonight, one way or another, those truths would become impossible to ignore. We pulled into the circular driveway behind two luxury vehicles that hadn't seen a grocery store parking lot in years. I recognized his father's car, German engineering, impeccable condition, probably detailed weekly by someone whose name his father had never learned. The other belonged to his mother, a status symbol she had chosen specifically because it photographed well at charity events. These were not cars that carried families to soccer games or accumulated crumbs in the back seat. These were cars that announced arrival. As the engine shut off, something inside me settled. The anticipation drained away. Wealth. I had seen their balance sheets. I knew what they owed and what they owned. I understood the difference between wealth that generates and wealth that consumes, between assets that build and assets that merely display. Their fortune was impressive by ordinary standards and fragile by extraordinary ones. Mine was neither visible nor vulnerable. I was prepared for their behavior. I had watched them for years. I knew their patterns. The way his father dominated conversations through volume and certainty. The way his mother controlled through implication and exclusion. The way they worked as a unit, dividing and conquering, making guests feel alternately important and inadequate. I had seen every tactic they used. Tonight, none of them would land. The front door opened before we reached it. Light spilled out onto the stone steps. A figure appeared in the doorway, his mother, dressed as if for a photograph, smiling in a way that never quite reached her eyes. "There you are," she said. "We've been waiting." I smiled back. "Then let's not keep anyone waiting any longer." If you've ever had to walk into a room knowing you'll be judged before you speak, type "I've been there." Because that feeling never forgets your name. The front door didn't open right away. We stood on the stone entryway longer than necessary, listening to movement behind the glass. Shadows shifted inside. Footsteps approached and then paused. Someone was there, just beyond the threshold, but no one reached for the handle. I felt my husband shift his weight beside me. His hand brushed mine briefly, not quite holding it, just checking that I was still there. Then the door finally opened. It wasn't his mother. It wasn't his father. It was their housekeeper. I recognized her from previous visits. Maria. She had worked for the family for over a decade, longer than I had known any of them. She moved through their world with quiet efficiency, invisible when they wanted her to be, present when they needed something done. She smiled politely, but her eyes carried something else. Apology. Recognition. A silent warning that something uncomfortable was waiting inside. I had always liked Maria. She noticed things. She remembered how I took my coffee. She asked about my work once, years ago, and actually listened to the answer. In a house full of people who looked past me, she had always looked directly at me. Tonight, her expression told me she had already seen whatever was coming. And she was sorry. "Good evening," she said, stepping aside. "Please come in." That alone told me everything I needed to know. In families where warmth exists, family opens the door. They wait in the entryway. They call out greetings before you even cross the threshold. They make arrival feel like reunion. In families where power exists, staff does. The family waits deeper inside, positioned in spaces they control, allowing you to come to them rather than meeting you halfway. It was a small thing, easily dismissed, easily explained away as convenience or coincidence. But I had stopped believing in coincidences with this family long ago. The foyer looked exactly as it always had. Marble floors polished to a mirror finish, so glossy I could see the chandelier's reflection stretched across the stone. The chandelier itself hung overhead like a statement, large enough to light a small theater, crystal catching and fracturing light into 1,000 tiny rainbows that scattered across the walls. Fresh flowers arranged like museum pieces instead of something someone actually touched. Lilies and roses in a crystal vase, positioned on a table that existed only to hold that vase, in a space that existed only to be admired on the way to somewhere else. Beautiful. Cold. Everything chosen for effect. Nothing chosen for comfort. The foyer wasn't designed to welcome people. It was designed to impress them, to establish, from the first step inside, that this was a home where everything had been curated, where nothing was accidental, where even the air felt expensive. We handed over our coats like visitors, not relatives. Maria took them with practiced grace, disappearing down a hallway towards some closet we had never been shown. My husband watched her go, and I saw something flicker across his face. Embarrassment, maybe, or sadness. This was the home he had grown up in, and even now, even married, even adult, he was still handing his coat to staff and waiting to be received. No one came to greet us. Not yet. We stood in the foyer, the two of us, surrounded by marble and crystal and silence. From somewhere deeper in the house, I could hear low conversation. Glasses clinking. The ambient sounds of people who were comfortable while we were not. Then his father appeared from the hallway, perfectly dressed, confident, relaxed in the way men become when they believe they own the room. He wore a sport coat that cost more than our monthly mortgage payment, tailored precisely to his shoulders, not a thread out of place. His watch caught the chandelier light, subtle but unmistakably expensive. His shoes gleamed. His posture communicated complete certainty that he belonged exactly where he stood and that everyone else existed in relation to him. "Ah, you made it," he said, extending his hand to my husband first. "Not welcome. Not so glad you're here. Just you made it." As if our arrival had been in doubt. As if we had passed some minor test by simply showing up. The handshake lingered too long. Grip slightly too tight. A dominance ritual disguised as politeness. I watched my husband's shoulders tense slightly, watched him match the grip without exceeding it, watched him navigate the silent contest his father had initiated. This was how they had always communicated, through pressure and posture, through contests neither would acknowledge aloud. Then he turned to me. "Good evening," he said, offering a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The smile was technically correct. Lips curved upward, teeth briefly visible. But his eyes stayed flat, appraising, unchanged by the expression his mouth was performing. He looked at me the way he might look at a piece of furniture someone else had chosen, acknowledging its presence without endorsing its selection. No hug, no warmth, no welcome, just acknowledgement, the bare minimum required by social convention. The precise amount of recognition necessary to avoid obvious rudeness while communicating clearly that more was not forthcoming. His mother appeared moments later, elegant and composed, pearls resting against her collarbone like armor. She moved with the practiced grace of someone who had spent decades being watched. Every gesture deliberate, every She held his face briefly in her hands, studying him with the particular attention mothers reserve for children they feel they're losing. Then turned to me and gave a light air kiss near my cheek without touching skin. The contrast was immediate and intentional. For him, full contact. For me, performance. Her lips stopped a careful inch from my face, delivering the gesture without the substance. I felt the brief warmth of her breath near my cheek, smelled her perfume, something floral and expensive, and then she was already pulling back, already moving on. It was theatrical closeness without intimacy. The kind of greeting exchanged between people who are required to acknowledge each other but have no interest in actually connecting. The kind of greeting that looks correct in photographs but feels hollow in the moment. "Lovely to see you," she said politely. The word lovely landed hollow. A word chosen for its vagueness. Not wonderful. Not so happy you came. Not anything that committed her to actual feeling. Lovely was the social equivalent of a placeholder, technically positive, functionally empty. We moved into the living room where their daughter sat scrolling on her phone, barely looking up when we entered. She occupied one corner of an enormous sectional sofa, legs curled beneath her, thumb moving rhythmically across her screen. She was in her late 20s, employed in some vague capacity at a family friends company, sustained by a trust fund that ensured she would never need to worry about anything as tedious as income. No greeting. No eye contact. Just a quiet message that I wasn't important enough to interrupt her screen time. She glanced up briefly when her brother entered, offered a half wave that might have been affection or might have been reflex, then returned her attention to her phone. When I entered directly behind him, she didn't look up at all. I had ceased to exist the moment I passed through her peripheral vision. Small things. Tiny signals. A door opened by staff instead of family. A handshake designed to dominate. An air kiss that avoided contact. A daughter who couldn't be bothered to look up. Each one, in isolation, could be explained away. Coincidence. Distraction. Different communication styles. Nothing worth mentioning. But small signals stacked together create very loud messages. The message was consistent. Unified. Clear. I was not family here. I was not welcome here. I was tolerated at best, an inconvenience attached to someone they actually valued, a presence to be endured rather than embraced. Then his father gestured toward the dining room. "Shall we?" It wasn't really a question. It was a direction dressed as an invitation. We were being moved from one stage to another, guided through the choreography someone had planned long before we arrived. The table was already set. Long, immaculate, formal. The dining table stretched like a polished runway, dark wood gleaming under another chandelier. Candles flickered in silver holders. Wine glasses stood at attention beside plates edged in gold. Everything arranged with geometric precision, as if someone had measured the distance between each fork and knife. 5 place settings. Not 6. Not 8. Exactly 5. The precise number of people in this house tonight. No extra chairs for unexpected guests. No casual arrangements suggesting flexibility. This dinner had been planned to the plate. But the seating arrangement told the real story. His parents sat on one side of the table. Their daughter beside them. A united front. 3 against 2. Positioned shoulder to shoulder, a wall of family facing us across the expanse of polished wood. My husband and I were guided to the opposite side. His father had gestured to specific chairs. His mother had nodded in confirmation. Even the seating wasn't left to chance. We were directed to our places like witnesses being positioned in a courtroom. Separated. Outnumbered. Positioned like guests being evaluated instead of family being welcomed. We sat across from them, the table's width between us like a barrier. I felt the formality of the arrangement pressing against me, the knowledge that I was facing a panel, a tribunal, a unified force that had already decided what this evening would contain. It wasn't accidental. Nothing in this house was accidental. Not the flowers. Not the lighting. Not the delay at the door or the air kiss or the daughter's studied indifference. Every element had been chosen. Every detail had been arranged. It was choreography, and we had walked onto a stage someone else had set. That's when I knew the night had already been planned long before we arrived. The conversation we were about to have, the important family matter mentioned in that cold text message, none of it would be spontaneous. None of it would be discovery. They had already discussed whatever they wanted to say. They had already agreed on their positions, their arguments, their strategy. We were here to receive a verdict, not to have a discussion. And I knew exactly what kind of night this was going to be. The kind where they would finally say the things they had been implying for years. The kind where the subtext would become text. The kind where small signals would become loud declarations. I reached for my water glass, took a slow sip, and waited. They had planned this evening down to the seating chart. They had no idea I had been planning longer. If you've ever recognized disrespect not in words but in behavior, comment, "I noticed." Because once you see these patterns, you never unsee them. Dinner started politely. Too politely. The kind of politeness that feels rehearsed instead of natural. Smiles that arrived on cue. Questions asked without genuine curiosity about the answers. The mechanical rhythm of people performing civility rather than feeling it. Small talk about traffic, weather, neighborhood developments. His father mentioned roadwork near the expressway. His mother commented on the unusual humidity for this time of year. Someone brought up a new development going in 3 miles away, luxury condominiums that would change the character of the area, though whether that was meant as praise or complaint remained deliberately unclear. Safe topics. Empty topics. The kind of conversation designed to fill air without creating connection. Words exchanged like currency that held no actual value, spent freely because no one was keeping track. Then the shift happened. It always does. The temperature in the room changed before anyone spoke. A settling. A focusing. The idle chatter falling away like scaffolding removed to reveal the structure beneath. My father-in-law cleared his throat and leaned back slightly in his chair, the posture of a man preparing to hold court. He set down his utensils with deliberate precision, dabbed the corner of his mouth with his napkin. Small rituals that commanded attention, that signaled the table should orient toward him now. "So," he said casually, "we just finalized a major expansion project. Largest development the company has ever taken on." His voice carried pride and expectation. The announcement wasn't casual at all. It was calculated, timed, delivered with the false ease of someone who had been waiting all evening for the right moment to display his accomplishments. He wasn't talking to me. He was performing. His audience was my husband, the son who had walked away from the family business, who had chosen a different path, who represented a rejection his father had never fully accepted. Every word was aimed at reminding him what he had left behind, what he could have been part of, what his choices had cost him. 10-year projection, multi-billion valuation upside. Takes vision to pull something like that off. He let the numbers hang in the air like a challenge. Multi-billion, a word designed to dwarf whatever we had built together. Our careful savings, our modest investments, our quiet stability, all of it rendered insignificant by the scale he was describing. I nodded politely. That sounds ambitious. The word disappointed him. I watched it register, the slight narrowing of his eyes, the almost imperceptible pause in his breathing. He had expected more, wanted more, perhaps questions about the details, perhaps impressed curiosity, perhaps the faint envy he believed his success entitled him to receive. He wanted admiration. He wanted debate. He wanted acknowledgement of his authority. He wanted me to engage on his terms, to step into the arena he had constructed, to compete in a game where he controlled all the visible pieces. Instead, I gave him neutral oxygen, a response that acknowledged without affirming, that heard without amplifying. Ambitious could mean impressive, or it could mean overreaching. I let him decide which interpretation to take. His wife smoothly picked up the baton. The transition was seamless. They worked as a team. These 2 decades of partnership had synchronized their rhythms. Where he displayed power directly, she worked through implication. Where he announced, she insinuated. "I ran into Melissa Grant last week," she said, turning toward my husband. Her daughter just married into a very impressive family. Real estate, private equity, international investments. They just bought a waterfront property in California. The name was strategic. Melissa Grant belonged to their social circle. Her daughter's marriage was a success story by their metrics. Wealth marrying wealth, status amplifying status. She smiled sweetly. Some people really know how to secure their futures. The implication wasn't subtle. Some people, meaning not us, not me, not the woman her son had chosen despite their objections. The waterfront property in California was a measuring stick, and I was meant to understand that I fell short. Across the table, their daughter finally looked up from her phone. She had been performing disinterest all evening, but she had been listening, waiting. Now she saw her opening. "I'm starting an internship at one of Dad's partner firms next month," she said proudly. "Real strategy work, not just consulting." She emphasized the last word. Consulting. My profession. Reduced to something lesser through 2 syllables and a dismissive tone. A small blade wrapped in a smile. She delivered it perfectly. Proud announcement on the surface, comparison underneath. Real strategy work. As if what I did was somehow unreal, insubstantial, not worthy of the same respect. My husband shifted beside me. I felt the tension move through his body before he spoke. The way his shoulders tightened. The way his breathing changed. "That's great," he said carefully. "Congratulations." His voice was controlled, measured, but I heard the effort beneath the words. She tilted her head slightly and looked directly at me. The performance of innocent curiosity. the slight angle that suggested genuine interest when it was actually targeting. "Do you ever regret not aiming higher?" she asked casually. "I mean, settling?" The word landed exactly where she intended. Settling. Not building. Not choosing. Settling. As if my life was a compromise I had learned to live with, rather than a decision I had made deliberately. The table went quiet. Not shocked quiet. Anticipation quiet. Forks paused. Wine glasses remained untouched. Everyone watching. They were watching to see how I would react. This was the moment they had been building toward. The careful small talk, the displays of success, the pointed comparisons, all scaffolding for this. Defend myself? Shrink? Snap? 3 options they could see. 3 responses that would confirm their power. I met her gaze calmly. "No," I said simply. "I don't regret building a life I actually enjoy." Her lips pressed together briefly. Not the answer she wanted. She had expected more. Something to pick apart. Instead, she got a closed door. Her father leaned forward slightly now. The patriarch stepping in when the younger generation's attack failed to land. "Ambition matters," he said, voice steady and authoritative. "Comfort can make people complacent. Some people never push themselves beyond mediocrity." His eyes flicked toward me without directly naming me. The accusation that maintains deniability. Speaking generally while meaning specifically. My husband's jaw tightened. I saw the muscle flex beneath his skin. He was reaching his limit. I placed my hand gently on his under the table. A silent message. Not yet. Not yet. Let them reveal themselves. Let them show exactly who they were when they believed they held all the power. Let them demonstrate, through accumulated behavior, that this wasn't misunderstanding. This was character. This wasn't dinner. This was positioning. They were establishing hierarchy, reminding us of our place, making clear that my presence was tolerated, not welcomed. And they were testing boundaries, probing to see how much we would absorb, how much disrespect we would accept. Each comment a measurement, each silence an invitation to push further. I took a slow sip of wine. They wanted a reaction. I gave them patience. If you've ever watched someone disguise disrespect as advice or concern, type "I see that." Because once you recognize the tactic, it loses its power. Dessert hadn't even arrived yet when his father reached down beside his chair. The movement was slow, deliberate, the kind of movement meant to draw attention without announcing itself. His hand disappeared below the table's edge, and I watched the shift in his shoulders, the slight adjustment of his weight. He had been waiting for this moment, timing it, building toward it through every comment and comparison that had come before. When his hand came back up, he was holding a leather folder. Thick, expensive, the kind lawyers use when they want documents to feel final. The leather was dark burgundy, embossed with no markings, anonymous but unmistakably professional. It had weight to it, substance, the kind of object that announced serious intentions before a single page was read. He placed it gently on the table. Not in front of my husband. In front of me. The leather made a soft sound against the polished wood, but the room went silent like something had shattered. Every fork stopped moving. Every glass remained untouched. The ambient sounds of the house, the distant hum of the refrigerator, the soft ticking of a clock somewhere, seemed to amplify in the sudden absence of human noise. My husband's hand tightened under mine. I felt his grip change from connection to anchor, his fingers pressing into my palm with an urgency that communicated what his voice hadn't yet said. He didn't know what was in that folder, but he knew it wasn't good. His mother folded her napkin neatly, already preparing for what she believed was the end of a negotiation. The gesture was practiced, precise. She smoothed the fabric once, twice, then placed it beside her plate with the same care she might use arranging flowers. Her expression held the serene satisfaction of someone watching a plan unfold exactly as designed. Their daughter leaned back slightly in her chair, watching like this was entertainment. She had abandoned her phone entirely now. This was more interesting than anything on her screen. Her arms crossed loosely over her chest, and a small smile played at the corners of her mouth, the expression of someone who had been promised a show and was finally getting it. "Before we continue," his father said calmly, "we think it's time for an honest conversation." His voice carried the measured authority of someone accustomed to controlling rooms. Honest conversation. As if everything before this had been preamble. As if the real dinner was only now beginning. He nudged the folder toward me with 2 fingers. A small push. Almost gentle. But the message was clear. This was mine to deal with. Mine to respond to. They had bypassed my husband entirely, negotiating directly with the problem they wanted removed. "Go ahead." I didn't touch it. I let the folder sit there, burgundy leather against dark wood, while the silence stretched. I felt them watching, waiting, expecting me to reach for it with trembling hands, to open it with growing dread. I looked at him instead, at the confidence in his posture, at the certainty that this was his moment, at the way he sat like a man who had never been refused, who had never encountered a situation his resources couldn't resolve. He believed he was holding all the cards. He believed this was already over. My husband leaned closer to me. "What is this?" he whispered. His voice was tight, confused. He was still catching up, still processing the fact that his parents had prepared something formal, something legal, without telling him, without asking him, without acknowledging that his opinion mattered at all. Erased like a clerical error. Grounds cited. Terms outlined. Division of assets. What little they imagined we had. Detailed with clinical precision. Everything arranged as if our 7 years together were simply a contract that had underperformed and needed to be terminated. Clipped to the front was a check. The pale blue paper stood out against the white documents, a rectangle of promise attached with a small silver clip. I lifted it slightly to see the amount clearly, though I had already registered the number of digits. $275,000. I stared at the number long enough to understand exactly what they were implying. Not a round number. Not 300,000, which might have suggested generosity. Not 200,000, which might have seemed arbitrary. 275,000. Specific. Calculated, justified by some formula they had worked out among themselves. They had calculated my worth. Someone, perhaps his father, perhaps their lawyers, perhaps both working together, had sat down and determined what I was valued at. What it would cost to make me disappear. What dollar amount would be sufficient to erase my presence from their son's life and their family's future. They assumed my income, my desperation, my limit. They had looked at my career, the consulting work they had never respected, and projected what someone like me might earn over time. They had estimated my ceiling and offered what they considered a meaningful sum. Enough to feel significant to someone they believed had nothing. Enough to matter to someone they assumed was struggling. 7 years of what they thought someone like me could ever make. 7 years. As if my future earnings were finite and predictable. As if my potential had already been fully realized and could be accurately forecasted by people who had never asked a single genuine question about my work or my capabilities. The number told me everything about how they saw me. Small. Limited. Purchasable. My husband's chair scraped against the floor. The sound was harsh against the marble, a physical disruption of the careful orchestration his parents had constructed. He was rising or trying to, half standing, his hands pressed against the table's edge. "What is this?" he demanded. His voice cracked slightly on the last word. Not weakness, shock. The kind of disbelief that comes from discovering the people who raised you are capable of something you never imagined. His father didn't look at him. He looked at me. The deliberate exclusion was its own message. This negotiation didn't involve my husband. He was the asset being recovered, not a participant in the discussion. His feelings, his opinions, his 7 years of choosing me every single day, none of it registered as relevant. "We'll be direct," he said. "You married into a family with standards, expectations. We've tried to respect your relationship, but it's clear this situation has limited your potential." Your potential. Addressed to me, but meaning his son. I was the limitation. I was the ceiling holding him down. I was the reason he hadn't achieved what they had planned for him, hadn't become who they had designed him to be. His mother nodded sympathetically. The sympathy was performed, precise. Her head tilted at exactly the right angle. Her expression arranged into something that might photograph as compassion. "This gives everyone a dignified exit," she added softly. "You walk away financially secure. Our son is free to rebuild his future appropriately." Appropriately. The word landed like a verdict. Appropriately meant without me. Appropriately meant with someone they selected or approved. Appropriately meant returning to the path they had planned before I had disrupted it. Their daughter smirked. "This is generous, honestly." She said it like she was doing me a favor by pointing it out. Like I should be grateful they were offering anything at all. Like $275,000 was more than someone like me deserved for the inconvenience of removing myself from their lives. My husband was shaking now. I could see it in his hands, still pressed against the table. In his shoulders, vibrating with restrained fury. In his jaw, clenched so tight I worried about his teeth. "You can't buy people," he said. "You can't just decide our marriage is a transaction." His voice was stronger now, steadier. The shock was crystallizing into anger, into clarity about what his parents had done and what they believed they could do. His father finally looked at him. The first direct acknowledgement all evening. But there was no apology in his expression. No recognition that he had crossed a line. Just the weary patience of a man dealing with a child who didn't understand how the world worked. "Sit down. The adults are handling this." The dismissal was total. Complete. His son, a grown man with a career and a marriage and 7 years of building a life, reduced to a child having a tantrum. Excluded from adult conversation. Told to be quiet while his betters resolved the situation. I felt the anger rise in my chest. It started low, beneath my ribs, and spread outward. Not the hot flash of temper that burns bright and fades fast. Something different. Something slower. Not loud anger. Cold anger. The kind that sharpens instead of burns. The kind that clarifies rather than clouds. I felt my mind growing still, focused, precise. Every detail in the room sharpened, the grain of the wood, the flicker of candlelight, the exact arrangement of expressions on the faces watching me. They didn't see a wife. They saw a problem to be removed. A line item to be closed. A complication in their carefully organized world, an anomaly to be corrected, a mistake their son had made that could still be fixed if the right amount of money changed hands. 7 years of marriage. 7 years of partnership. 7 years of building something real with someone I loved. Worth $275,000 in their calculation. I picked up the check slowly and examined it. Turned it over. Studied the signature, his father's, already applied. Looked at the bank name, the account number, the careful typography that made this small rectangle of paper feel so official. Let them believe I was considering it. Let my silence stretch. Let them interpret my examination as temptation, as calculation, as the moment when their offer began. Father frowned. The first crack in his certainty. The script had called for me to accept or reject, to negotiate or capitulate. It hadn't included this. A call to who? His voice carried an edge now, irritation masquerading as curiosity. He wasn't accustomed to deviations from his plans. I met his eyes calmly, held his gaze without blinking, without wavering, without any of the deference he had expected from someone he considered so far beneath him. My attorney. The room shifted. The word hung in the air, rearranging everything. Attorney. Not a desperate response. Not an emotional reaction. A professional one. A prepared one. Uncertainty crept into their perfect posture for the first time all night. His mother's composed expression flickered. His father's frown deepened. Their daughter stopped smirking. The unified front that had seemed so impenetrable moments ago showed its first fractures. They had expected tears or acceptance. They had not expected this. If you've ever watched someone realize they may have misjudged you, type UHOH. Because that moment changes everything. My father-in-law pushed his chair back slightly. The legs scraped against the marble floor, a harsh, discordant sound in the carefully curated atmosphere. His composure was slipping, and the sound betrayed it. There's no need to escalate this, he said, irritation slipping into his voice. This is a private family matter. He emphasized family as if the word itself was a boundary I wasn't permitted to cross. As if invoking it would remind me of my place, outside the circle, beneath consideration, subject to their decisions rather than a participant in them. No, I replied calmly. This is a legal one. The correction was quiet but absolute. They had made it legal the moment they placed that folder in front of me. They had invited attorneys into this conversation. I was simply accepting the invitation. I took my phone from my purse and placed it directly on the center of the table. The device sat there, small and unassuming among the crystal glasses and silver candlesticks. It looked almost out of place amid the formal place settings, too modern, too ordinary for this theatrical display of old wealth. Speaker on. The small device suddenly felt like the most powerful object in the room. More powerful than the leather folder. More powerful than the check inside it. More powerful than all the accumulated wealth this house represented. Because what it was about to deliver would change everything. My husband stared at me, confusion and concern crossing his face. He didn't understand yet. Couldn't understand. For 7 years, I had kept this part of myself hidden from him, not out of deception, but out of love. out of a desire to be seen for who I was rather than what I controlled. "You don't need a lawyer for this," he whispered. His voice was gentle, worried. He thought I was escalating unnecessarily, thought I was making things worse. He wanted to protect me from whatever consequences might come from challenging his father directly. I squeezed his hand once, a silent promise, a request for faith. "Trust me." 2 words that carried the weight of our entire marriage. Every moment he had chosen me. Every time he had defended me. Every night we had built something real while his family dismissed us both. I was asking him to trust that all of it had meant something, that I had never betrayed that trust, even in the things I hadn't said. I scrolled through my contacts slowly, intentionally. My thumb moved across the screen with deliberate patience. Past names he would recognize, past colleagues and friends, deeper into a list he had never had reason to explore. Letting the silence stretch. Each second that passed without me speaking was a second their certainty eroded. I could feel them watching, wondering, recalculating, letting their confidence drain. The folder still sat on the table. The check still waited inside it. But somehow, in the span of a few heartbeats, the power in the room had begun to shift. Then I tapped the name. Marcus Hale. 3 syllables that meant nothing to anyone at this table except me. The phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Each ring landed heavier than the last. The sound filled the dining room, bouncing off marble and crystal. No one moved. No one spoke. They were frozen in the amber of their own assumptions, waiting to see what would emerge. Finally, the line connected. "Good evening," a calm male voice answered. "This is Marcus Hale." Marcus had been my attorney for 11 years. He had structured every holding company, reviewed every acquisition, protected every asset. He knew more about my financial position than anyone alive, including my husband. "Marcus," I said evenly, "I'm at dinner with the Whitmore family and need you to confirm something for me." I kept my voice level, professional, as if this were any other business call. As if the people watching me hadn't just tried to buy my marriage for the price of a modest house. A pause. "Of course. What would you like confirmed?" No hesitation. No questions about why I was calling at this hour or what circumstances had prompted the request. Marcus understood discretion. He understood timing. And he understood that when I called like this, I had my reasons. "Please walk everyone through the ownership structure of Whitmore Development Group." My father-in-law froze. The words hit him before their meaning fully registered. His company, his name, his legacy. Suddenly under discussion by a voice he didn't recognize, at the request of a woman he had just tried to dismiss. "What?" he snapped. "This is ridiculous." His voice cracked slightly on the last word, not with emotion, but with the strain of trying to maintain authority when control was slipping away. I held up one finger without breaking eye contact. A simple gesture. The kind a teacher might use to quiet a student. The kind that said, "Wait, start with total valuation," I added. Another brief pause. Marcus understood exactly what I was doing. He had helped me prepare for variations of this moment for years. Not this specific scenario, but the possibility that someday, somehow, the truth would need to be revealed. Whitmore Development Group is currently valued at approximately $23 billion, Marcus said clearly. The number echoed through the dining room. 23 billion. Not the multi-billion his father had boasted about earlier, an actual figure, precise and verified, larger than the vague projections he had used to intimidate us. My mother-in-law inhaled sharply. The sound was involuntary, escaping before she could contain it. Her composure, so carefully maintained all evening, showed its first genuine crack. My husband's head turned slowly toward me. I could feel his gaze without meeting it, the weight of his attention, the questions forming behind his eyes. I would answer them all, but not yet. Outstanding shares total 100 million, Marcus continued. The primary shareholder is Atlas Meridian Holdings, owning 47 million shares. Silence. Pure silence. The kind that follows a detonation, when the sound has passed but the shockwave is still traveling. No one moved. No one breathed. The words hung in the air like debris that hadn't yet fallen. My father-in-law's lips parted slightly. He was trying to process, trying to reconcile what he was hearing with what he believed he knew. Atlas Meridian Holdings. The name would be familiar to him. He had seen it on shareholder reports, on proxy statements, on the documents that governed his own company. But he had never known who owned it. "That's impossible," he muttered. His voice was barely audible. Not a challenge, not a denial. A desperate hope that somehow what he was hearing wasn't true. Marcus continued evenly. Atlas Meridian Holdings is a privately held entity established in 2009. Sole beneficial owner. He paused just long enough to make the room feel like it was tilting. 1 second. 2 seconds. An eternity compressed into a breath. Is Mrs. Elena Whitmore. Every face snapped toward me. 4 heads turning in unison. 4 expressions shifting from confusion to disbelief to something that hadn't fully formed yet. The woman they had spent the evening dismissing. The woman they had tried to pay to disappear. That woman, sitting calmly at their table, her phone still broadcasting the truth they had never imagined. My husband stared like the world had shifted under his feet. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound emerged. He was looking at me, really looking, as if seeing someone he had never met before. Not with betrayal. Not yet with understanding. Just with the pure shock of reality rearranging itself. His mother's hand flew to her mouth. The gesture was involuntary, almost theatrical in its drama. But for once, nothing about her reaction was performed. This was genuine shock, the kind that bypasses social training entirely. His daughter whispered, "What?" The single syllable escaped like air from a punctured balloon. Her smirk was gone. Her smugness was gone. In its place was the blank incomprehension of someone whose assumptions had just been demolished. My father-in-law slowly sat back in his chair, color draining from his face. He had aged 10 years in 10 seconds. The confident patriarch who had orchestrated this entire evening, who had placed that leather folder in front of me with such certainty, now looked like a man who had just discovered the ground beneath him was made of paper. "That means," Marcus continued professionally, "Mrs. Whitmore controls 47% of Whitmore Development Group and has been the majority shareholder for over a decade." The every corner of the space that had been designed to impress and intimidate. The candles still flickered. The crystal still gleamed. But everything felt different now. Smaller somehow, less imposing. My father-in-law finally found his voice. It took him several attempts. His throat worked. His lips moved soundlessly. Then finally, roughly, the words emerged. You're telling me my company." He couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't bring himself to say it aloud. "Is partially mine." I said calmly. Has been for a very long time. I let the words settle. No triumph in my voice. No gloating. Just simple fact, delivered with the same composure I had maintained all evening. My husband stared at me, disbelief layered with shock. The confusion was giving way to something else now. The pieces were connecting. All those years of watching me work quietly, of wondering why I seemed so unconcerned with money, of trusting that I had my reasons even when I didn't explain them. You're the investor? His voice was hoarse. He had heard his father complain about the mysterious majority shareholder for years. The silent partner who never attended meetings. The anonymous entity that held more power than anyone else but never used it. Yes, I replied softly. I never lied to you. I just never used it. It was the truth. Every word I had ever spoken to him was true. I had simply omitted the scale of what I held. Not to deceive him, but to protect what we had from being distorted by it. Their world had just tilted off its axis. Everything they believed, about me, about themselves, about the hierarchy they had constructed, was built on a foundation that had just crumbled. The woman they had dismissed. The wife they had belittled. The nobody they tried to buy out. Owned nearly half of their empire. The leather folder still sat on the table between us, the check inside it now laughably small. $275,000. They had offered me a fraction of a percentage of my own holdings as payment for disappearing. I looked at my father-in-law. He looked back at me. And for the first time in 7 years, he truly saw me. If you believe quiet strength always speaks eventually, type she knew. Because patience has a way of becoming undeniable. For a moment, no one spoke. Shock has a way of freezing people in place. My husband kept staring at me like he was trying to reconcile two realities at once. The woman he shared grocery lists with. The woman who quietly controlled billions. My mother-in-law looked like the room had lost oxygen. My father-in-law finally found his voice. This is some kind of trick, he said hoarsely. Paper structures. Shell companies. That doesn't make you in control. I met his eyes evenly. You've been using my capital for over a decade. His jaw tightened. That's absurd. Is it? I asked calmly. Because the domain expansion you bragged about earlier was funded entirely through Atlas Meridian's capital injection. His pupils flickered. Attell. And the waterfront acquisition 2 years ago, I continued. That was also my funding. Silence again. His daughter whispered, Dad. His mother turned slowly toward him. You told me the institutional partners funded those projects. He didn't answer. I leaned forward slightly. There's a reason you invited me to dinner tonight, I said quietly. And it has nothing to do with family. His breathing grew shallow. I know about the pending sale, I continued. The undisclosed negotiations with Crestview Capital. His head snapped up. That's confidential. So is attempting to sell a company you don't control, I replied. My husband turned sharply toward his father. What sale? The room shifted. Fear entered the space. You've been trying to quietly sell your 18% stake, I said evenly. To trigger a control shift and push a full acquisition through before the majority shareholder could object. My mother-in-law stood up abruptly. You were selling the company? He avoided her eyes. It was necessary, he muttered. The market is shifting. No, I said calmly. It's because you're over-leveraged. I reached into my bag and slid a thin folder onto the table. Bank summaries, margin calls, personal debt exposure. You've lost over $200 million in the last 3 years, I continued. Risky trades, poor timing, ego decisions. His face collapsed. You mortgaged your credibility. My husband stared at the documents in disbelief. You were going to sell everything without telling us? My father-in-law swallowed hard. Then why tonight? My husband demanded. I answered for him. Because he needed me gone. They all turned toward me. He needed the majority shareholder out of the picture. Divorce. Annulment. Emotional leverage. Once I was removed, the sale could proceed quietly. The realization landed like a bomb. His mother staggered slightly. His daughter looked terrified. My husband's hands clenched into fists. The dinner wasn't about protecting family. It was about desperation. And then the doorbell rang. Everyone froze. The housekeeper appeared hesitantly in the doorway. Mr. Whitmore, she said softly. Mr. Calder from Crestview Capital has arrived. He says you scheduled final paperwork for this evening. My father-in-law went pale. If you've ever watched a lie collapse in real time, type exposed. Because truth doesn't knock gently. The room felt frozen as footsteps echoed down the hallway. Every second stretched longer than the last. Then he appeared. Tall, confident, tailored suit. The kind of man who moves through spaces like he expects ownership to follow him. Mr. Calder. He paused when he saw the tension in the room. The scattered documents. The rigid posture. The faces still recovering from impact. This doesn't look like a celebration, he said cautiously. My father-in-law tried to recover. Calder, perfect timing, he said too quickly. We were just discussing. I'm Elena Whitmore, I said calmly, standing. We haven't formally met, but you already know who I am. Recognition flashed across his face, then something close to relief. Yes, he said carefully. I do. My father-in-law's head snapped toward him. You do. Calder exhaled. My team discovered Atlas Meridian's ownership position during due diligence 6 months ago. 47%. Silence slammed into the room. I knew any transaction required Mrs. Whitmore's approval, Calder continued, which is why this deal was never going to close. My father-in-law staggered backwards slightly. You told me everything was on track. Calder's tone hardened. I told you what you wanted to hear. Because misrepresenting ownership and concealing a majority stakeholder is not negotiation. It's fraud. The word landed like a verdict. Fraud. His wife's hand flew to her chest. His daughter began to cry. My husband's face went rigid with disbelief and betrayal. I don't do business with people who lie about control, Calder added quietly. This deal is terminated effective immediately. He turned toward me. Mrs. Whitmore, I apologize for allowing this situation to play out instead of addressing you directly. That was unprofessional. I nodded. Understood. He handed me his card. If you ever consider legitimate partnership discussions, I'd welcome the conversation. Then he turned and left without another word. The door closed softly behind him. Final. My father-in-law sank into his chair like something essential had been removed from him. The empire he thought he controlled had just evaporated. If you've ever watched arrogance collapse under truth, type karma. Because reality always collects its debt. No one spoke for a long moment. Grief doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks empty. My father-in-law stared at the table like he no longer recognized the world. His wife sat frozen, processing a lifetime of assumptions unraveling. Their daughter sobbed quietly, mascara streaking down her face. My husband finally broke the silence. You were going to sacrifice our marriage for money. His father didn't answer. He couldn't. I stood slowly. This ends tonight, I said calmly. Not angry, not theatrical. Final. There will be an emergency board meeting Monday morning, I continued. We will restructure leadership immediately. My father-in-law lifted his head. You can't do this. I already have, I replied. His voice cracked. This company is my life. No, I said gently. It was your identity, and you gambled it. I turned toward their daughter. Your internship offer is withdrawn effective immediately. Her sobbing intensified. Not as punishment, I added calmly. As education. Learn what it means to build something without privilege. I turned back to him. You'll be offered a limited advisory role if you're willing to operate with transparency and humility. If not, you're free to walk away. This wasn't revenge. It was correction, structure, boundaries. My husband stood beside me now, silent but steady. If you believe accountability is an act of love, type boundaries. Because protecting truth protects everyone. I reached into my bag and removed a yellowed envelope. Old, worn, sealed decades ago. This belonged to my grandmother, I said quietly. She was your father's former business partner. His head lifted slowly. She left me one instruction, I continued. When you fell again, help you. Not because you deserve it, but because your family does. I opened the letter and read aloud. Her words spoke of integrity, of humility, of wealth without wisdom being empty, of second chances requiring responsibility. By the time I finished, my father-in-law was openly crying. Not embarrassment, grief, regret. The kind of breakdown that comes when a lifetime of denial finally collapses. His wife knelt beside him, shaken. My husband squeezed my hand tightly. This is why I invested, I said softly. Not to dominate you. To protect what could have mattered if you had chosen differently. I folded the letter carefully and placed it on the table. You still have a chance to become someone better than who you were, I said. That choice is yours. We walked toward the door. Not triumphant. Not angry. Just finished. My husband turned once more toward his family, eyes full of pain and clarity. We deserve better than manipulation, he said quietly. Then we left. Into the night. Into truth. Into our real life. If this story reminds you that dignity matters more than status, comment self-respect. Because no amount of money can replace it.